Hello explorers and welcome to another video. Today we are going to talk about Java 20 and what's new in that version. So let's jump right into it. And in Java 20, which I have been calling Divide and Concurrent, which has the release date of 2023-03-21, it's filled with good functionality to do things in a light threaded way in a fast environment. So you can do multiple things at the same time, and you also add a bunch of things that makes it easier to work with your data. So let's continue to the next slide here. We will talk about scoped values. And that came up when they were talking about lightweight threads and having data that is persistent inside of the same thread and how to actually handle that in a good way. Because at the moment they have the problem that in scope value, in the current thread ecosystem, you have thread local, which is a variable that is just between in this thread and nowhere else. And when you're running thread locals, it's usually a static final, and then you set it in somewhere in the thread and then get it somewhere else. But the problem there is that it has unconstrained immutability, so it can change whenever you have this thread, and it's also unbound for the lifetime, which means that if you don't remove it somewhere, it doesn't really have an end time when it's returned to the garbage collector. If you are closing down the thread, of course, then that value will disappear, but if you don't do that, you don't really have that cleanup doing, and you don't really know when this variable is no longer interesting. And it's also expensive to have this kind of inheritance, so it's not a really good way to write code, and it can be very hard to follow. So when we're going into virtual light threads, we wanted something better, and the scoped values actually works like this. You have a scoped value that you define first up here, and then where you want to use it, you where this scope value is equal to some value, and then you will run your method lambda or whatever you want to run, where this scoped value will be used at some point, and then that is just between that function, when you run that function, and nowhere else. And when that function has run, the scoped value is returned to the garbage collector and can be collected with the rest of the memory. And next up, we have the record patterns that have a second preview. So we have just one really major change here, and that is that we will handle the records in a 4 array as well. So this is more of a cleanup where there were some features that should have been in it already, but it didn't make it into the first preview. There is some other small minor changes, but I will not mention them here. You can look them up. Next up, we have the pattern matching for switch, which also have some small changes in the semantics to make it more readable and more understandable. But the major change here, I would say, is again that records could be used in a switch, even though you haven't defined the actual data types. It could be inferred in the actual pattern matching in the switch, which is nice, of course, that you don't have to write it there. I would probably implicitly write it out here to make it more readable, but it can now be inferred. Next up, we have the foreign function and memory API, which has a second preview. It also have changed some smaller things. I've mentioned them here. Mostly it's that the abstractions have been unified to work better and be easier to understand. And we also have the switch statement that can handle these kind of statements in a hierarchy in a better way. But you can read more about this in the second preview. I'm really excited about this API because it can help a lot when you have a bunch of data that you need to handle that comes from a separate process and so on. So it's something really interesting. They're doing a second round here in order to get more feedback on this specific JEP. Next up, we have the virtual threads, and I've already spoken on some changes to the virtual threads. It's a second preview in order to do the other changes that we had there, get more feedback about the virtual threads. The thinking about the virtual threads is that they should be more lightweight. You should be able to run millions of these virtual threads in the same process in order to get things done much faster and in a more efficient way, where you can have very small data loads that are running in parallel. And the same goes for this structured concurrency. It's also a JEP that I run again in a second incubator. Similar to the virtual thread, is a way of running in a structured concurrent way. And they don't do any major changes to this. They have just opened a new JEP in order to get more feedback on this functionality now that they have changes to the virtual threads and this specific previous JEP due to records and switch statements. So this is what this new Java 20 is containing. It's not much, but the features that it contains is really exciting. So when they have tried this and actually land in something that is really robust, we will have a very good way of handling threads, running things in parallel, and switching between different data types and different kinds of records or other kind of data in efficient and a good way between different processes, different languages, and in Java. So this is what I wanted to cover today. I hope that you found this interesting. Is there any of these JEPs that excite you more than the others? Please leave a comment about that in the comment section down below. If there is something that you want me to try out and talk more about, leave a comment about that as well. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. And I really hope to see you in the next video.